All right, so let's do a quick review. Learning about motivation, specifically how to motivate employees, right? Just works. It works. And then it stopped working.
Did you get new batteries?
I did put, I mean, they weren't like brand new batteries, but I put different batteries. Maybe you're right. Maybe I need brand new batteries. I need to motivate myself to go buy some new batteries. Okay, so we talked about basically how motivation works, right? There has to be something that makes you want to do something enough that you actually do it, right? That's what motivation is all about. Because you're not going to reach your goal if you don't take action. And you're not going to take action if you don't have enough desire to do it. And the things that motivate us can be external or extrinsic. They could also be internal or intrinsic, right? We learned about Taylor, whose approach to management didn't really consider motivation. It was more just based on getting things done, not thinking about how people feel or how they think, just the action itself. And while it was effective, it was limited because it didn't consider motivation. Then Eldon Mayo and his team come along. They discover that the workers they were studying at the Hawthorne plant were behaving differently because they were being studied. And they realized, oh, we need to pay attention to what's going on in people's minds because that influences how they behave. So it started this whole field of behavioral research. One of the key figures in that field is Maslow, Abraham Maslow, who you see here, who gave us the hierarchy of needs, right? Where he basically said, we have to meet our lower level needs before we can pay attention to our higher level needs in general. But as I mentioned on Monday, there are exceptions, right? This is not necessarily 100% true 100% of the time, but it is a general rule that we're most concerned with our physical needs. Only when those are addressed can we really focus on our more psychological needs. And only when those have been addressed can we self-actualize and become who we're capable of becoming. As a general rule, that does seem to be true, but there are plenty of exceptions you can find. We learned about McGregor's theory X and theory Y. Let's review that. What is the assumption that a theory X manager makes? What do they assume about workers? That they're lazy, that they don't want to work, right? Whereas the theory Y manager assumes that people do want to work, that they do want to do a good job as long as they get the necessary support. And those are, very opposite perspectives. And I don't think you find too many people who are 100% theory X or 100% theory Y. Most people are somewhere in the middle, but it is just a helpful tool to think about these differing perspectives that managers might have. Then we talked about theory Z. So somebody summarize for me, what was theory Z? What did Auchi propose in theory Z? Yes, Carl. Well, I think you're referring back to theories X and Y. Z was different. Right. In theory Z, Auchi looked at Japanese and American management styles and created a hybrid of the two, which really leaned a little more towards the Japanese approach. Which actually kind of makes sense if you look at Japanese industry. They have really excelled in electronics and vehicles. So there is a lot to be learned from the way Japanese companies do things. So the combined approach, according to Aochi, is more effective. We did talk about this on Monday, right? Okay. Yeah, making sure. All right. So theory X and theory Y were from McGregor. It had to do with how managers perceive employees. Theory Z is the combination of Japanese and American management styles. And really, we are now in a very global business environment, right? It's normal and when you work in a business to work with people from other cultures. Your business might have customers in other countries, suppliers in other countries, employees in other countries. So it's normal that all the cultures of the world in business are kind of congregating towards a more global business culture. So I think Aochi's theory Z is a good basis for that. You know, what is the best way to manage employees, regardless of what culture you come from? We didn't get to Herzberg, so that's where we will start. And this is the last of the original management theories that we're going to look at, or motivation theories. And then we'll start to get into some of the more contemporary theories that came more like later in the 20th century. So Herzberg had a very interesting approach that somewhat is similar to Maslow, but it's more complex. Herzberg said there are some things that motivate people, and he called those motivating factors. And by motivating, what he meant, and what people generally mean, is that it causes them to behave differently. So the things he identified that cause people to behave differently in the workplace are a feeling of achievement or desire for achievement, being recognized, the actual work, that somebody's actually enjoying their work, that can be motivating. Having responsibility, the opportunity for advancement in the organization or growth, learning new things, developing your skills. These are all things that Herzberg said are motivating. And if we think back to Maslow's hierarchy, do these motivating factors relate more to the physical things, the physical needs we have, or do they relate more to the psychological needs we have? What do you think? Psychological, right? These are pretty much intrinsic, internal things. It's how we feel. So when these things are addressed in the workplace, that can be motivating. And from a management perspective, a really good thing about that is a lot of this doesn't cost money. You can go up to an employee and say, oh, you did a really good job on that product last week or that project. I like the way that you assembled the data and you presented it. You know, way to go. You know, you tell an employee that kind of thing, that might motivate them to try even harder next time. Because it feels good, right? To do a good job. And it's free. It doesn't cost the company anything for the manager to do that. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, the part that gets kind of complicated is Herzberg said there are other things that are hygiene factors. Hygiene, not like dental hygiene, but hygiene meaning it's something that you have to maintain. You have to make sure you have a certain level. Like, let's start with working conditions. If you go into work and let's say it's a hot day and the air conditioner is out at work, and you're sitting there and you're sweating and you're miserable, you might be thinking, I hate this place. I want to quit. right? This is wrong. And in fact, technically, it is wrong. Your employer is required under OSHA guidelines to provide a comfortable working environment. But that would be demotivating, right? To have your working conditions get worse. On the other hand, if you came into work and all of a sudden your working conditions got better somehow, like maybe you come in the next day and they fix the air conditioner. In your mind, you would be thinking, well, that's what they were supposed to do. I'm not going to work harder just because they improve the working conditions. I'm going to do my normal work, right? It doesn't motivate you to do anything beyond what you would normally do. So we need to maintain working conditions. If they improve, great, but that's not necessarily going to make people more motivated. Let's look at some of these other examples. Company policies. Okay, well, companies have policies, right? They have rules. We don't tend to get really excited. Oh, they've got a new policy. Wonderful. I'm so happy. I'm going to work harder. No. That's probably not going to happen. So company policies don't really motivate us. But if there is some issue with the company policy, it could become demotivating. Supervision. Is there anybody here who's like really excited when your boss supervises you more? Probably not. Increased supervision does not necessarily make us more motivated. Maybe increased time and feedback from your supervisors, but you don't want your boss just like staring over your shoulder all day, right? That's not going to motivate us. On the other hand, if you come into work and the boss hasn't been there for a week, and you've got questions, and you've got issues that you need addressed, but there's no supervisor, that could be demotivating. So again, this is something we need to maintain, but if we increase it, it doesn't necessarily motivate us. Same thing, interpersonal relationships. You expect people to be professional in the workplace. If they're not, that could be demotivating. You expect to have some job security. As long as you're doing a decent job, you don't expect to get fired. But if you know the company is about to lay people off, that could cause some stress. It might make it harder for you to do your job. You might be sitting there at your desk sending out resumes instead of actually trying to get more work done. And then this is the one that I think might be hardest to understand. I had a real hard time with it at first. According to Herzberg, your salary and your benefits, in other words, your compensation, is not a motivator. I had to think about that, because why do we go to work? We go to work to get a paycheck, right? I mean, maybe for other reasons too. But if they stopped paying you, you'd probably stop going, right?
Yeah.
So we are motivated to go to work to get paid, okay? However, it kind of stops there. If you came into work one day and your boss said, we're giving you a raise, you're going to get paid an extra $2 an hour. Okay, great. Are you going to start working harder? No. And in your mind, you're thinking, well, that's what I deserve. So I'm just going to keep doing the same job I've been doing. And thank you for the raise, right? It doesn't make you work harder, or maybe for a day or two because you're excited, but then you go back to kind of just your normal work. On the other hand, if you came into work and your boss said, we're cutting your pay by $2 an hour, that might demotivate you a little bit, right? So I think Herzberg was right. Our compensation is a hygiene factor, something that has to be maintained, not something that motivates us. The promise of future raises or bonuses, that might motivate us, right? If your boss says, if you produce twice as many products this month, you'll get a bonus. Well, okay, then you're gonna work harder to get that. But once you get the bonus, it's no longer a motivator. It's only the promise of maybe getting it that motivates you. But the money itself, you feel like you deserved it. So it's sometimes called the two-factor theory, meaning you got your motivating factors and your hygiene factors. Sometimes it's called the motivator hygiene factor theory. So it's got a couple different names, but that's basically what Herzberg said. And over time, I've come to agree with it. Questions or comments? Oh, here's a study that actually looked at these different factors. We can see the motivators over here. We can see the hygiene factors over here. And this study basically supported what Herzberg said. These motivators, when they're increased, motivation goes up. The hygiene factors, when they're decreased, motivation goes down. So that helps support that there is some truth to this theory. Now, how would you as a manager use this information to try to keep your employees more motivated, doing a better job, working harder? What could you apply from Herzberg's theory to try to accomplish that? Okay, right. If recognition is a motivator, build it into your schedule. Try to.
That's what motivate. That's right. People they have like a picture of the
employee of the month. Okay.
The whole community sees it.
Yeah, so that can work. Now, personally, my thought about that kind of thing is you've got one employee that's being recognized and maybe 100 that are not, right? So is there a better way to do it where everybody feels recognized? But yeah, that's a common approach. Or you give them a special parking spot for the month or something like that. Daisy.
Something that they have done on my job is like bring food to the employees.
Okay. Yeah, bringing in food. Now, food is, at the bottom level of Maslow's hierarchy. But the fact that food is being brought in is recognition, right? It's saying to the team, we value you enough to give you something extra, right? And people enjoy eating, so it can be a motivator that management thought enough to do that. Yandere.
What about Home Depot, where like I think every 6 months that they work, they get a $600 bonus check?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, just every 6 months?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that practically helps with retention, right? Because if you're thinking of quitting, you think, okay, if I stay a couple more months, I'll get that $600 bonus check, and then you get the check, and by that time, maybe you've already changed your mind and you want to stay there. So that would just practically help people stay longer, but it also does recognize them, right? So, and it gives them more money, right? So it works on both levels. Other thoughts?
I was wondering, like the food incentive thing,
Mm-hmm.
they get to write that off on taxes or?
True, yeah. All the expenses of a company reduce their profits and therefore they pay less in income taxes. Okay. Now, a lot of multi-billion-dollar companies don't pay any income taxes anyways. They've got fancy accountants that can find loopholes, so they don't pay their income taxes. But yeah, that is an added benefit. Okay, so let's talk about expectancy theory, and then we'll switch over to the grow activity. This is Vroom, another management theorist, but he came along a little bit later with his theory. So this is now getting into the more contemporary theories. It's called expectancy theory, and it's pretty simple. A lot of these theories, you might feel like, I could have come up with that. Any of us could have come up with this theory, but it actually takes a lot of research, digging into the past literature on that particular topic, looking at studies, and trying to understand how things work in order to come up with a theory that might seem very simple, but it's also very useful. So expectancy theory tells us we are only going to make an effort if we expect that we can actually perform, can actually do what we're trying to do. And we only care about performance if it's going to lead to the outcome that we want. And we only care about the outcome if it meets our individual needs. Again, it makes perfect sense. Let's apply a relevant concept. Let's think about this class. This class takes effort, right? Being here in class, doing the homework activities, reading the textbook, right? All of that takes effort. And I think you feel that if you make the effort, you can actually do it. You can be here. You can finish the reading assignments to some degree, at least. Or you can, maybe you don't always, right? I mean, I know you don't always read everything, but you can. You have the ability, one way or the other, to go through the textbook, get familiar with the chapter. You can perform. You can submit the chapter quiz, right? Maybe not get a perfect score, but you can do it. So we all know if we make the effort, we can to some degree perform. And then what is the outcome? We do that enough times, we pass the class, right? Maybe we even pass the class with an A. And why do we care about that? What's the benefit of passing the class? You get credit, right? Which can help you with your transfer, with getting your degree. Yeah, right? That's how it works. And maybe our education system will change in the future, but today that's basically the way it works. Get your credits, that gets you a degree, that helps you in your career, right? So it meets the individual needs of getting that degree, but also a sense of fulfillment. You learn things, you've demonstrated your ability. Did you want to say something, Wendy?
We keep the information in our personal too.
Yeah, exactly. We can use the information in our lives. It helps us maybe make better decisions in our careers.
Yeah.
Yes. But all of these things have to be in place. If we felt that, we can make the effort, but we just can't learn this stuff. Now, hopefully you don't feel that way about this class, but maybe like an advanced calculus class or something really complicated, you might feel that way. Like, I just don't get it. And if you feel like even though you make the effort, you're not going to perform, that could be very discouraging and maybe you'll stop. Or maybe you think, I can ace every class, every test in this course, but I think the instructor is going to fail me anyways because they just don't like me. Well, then why try, right? If that's what you believe, that's going to be demotivating. Or maybe you can think, I can pass this class and I can get credits, but they're not general ed credits and they're not credits that count towards my major, so they're not going to help me get my degree. I took the wrong class. Then maybe you won't be motivated, right? So all of these things have to be in place in order for you to stay motivated. So although it's a very simple concept, it can help us understand what's going on with an employee. If you've got somebody, they're just not showing up to work, or they're showing up, but they're not doing a good job. Try to figure out, where's the breakdown? Why is it that they're not making the effort? Is it they don't think they can perform, they don't think the performance will lead to the outcome, or they don't think the outcome will lead to their needs getting met? And once you figure out where's that breakdown in their belief system, then you can work on, how do we fix that? So very simple theory, but it can be very useful. Now, as a manager, I don't know how many folks here have ever been a manager, but there is a line. You don't want to pry too much into individuals' lives, right? If you become good friends with one of the people that reports to you, that can be a difficult thing to maintain, because now you have a working relationship, but you also have a friendship, right? And then there's a conflict there. But even if that doesn't happen, just, you're trying to, like, okay, I'll give you an example. Back when I worked for this internet company, this was around the year 2000. And I had one employee, she was one of the best employees on the team that I had. Very smart, did a great job. She'd get a little bit of an attitude sometimes, but otherwise she did an excellent job. But started to smell bad. And I noticed it, and some of the other employees were complaining to me about it. And I'm like, okay, I guess I have to deal with this situation. So I asked her to meet with me in a conference room, and that was a little tough, because the area where my department was located was about like half the size of this room. So if I'm gonna go meet with her in a conference room, everybody's going to see that we're going to meet in a conference room, right? So it's always awkward. The employee doesn't know why they're being called into the conference room. Everybody starts whispering what's going on. But I had to meet with her. So I tried to schedule it at a time when it would not be too conspicuous. And we sat down and I had a meeting with her. And I said to her, look, there's a hygiene issue. Not to use Herzberg's term, but I'm talking about physical hygiene, right? So I didn't want to say you smell bad, right? Because that would be very rude. I just said, there appears to be a hygiene issue. And she said, I understand. She said, I've been living in my car, which is something I hadn't known about. And I don't have a place to take a shower. And she said, but I'll take care of it. That was it. Very short conversation. I said, okay, thank you for understanding. I appreciate your professionalism. And then she did, it was no longer an issue. So you can try to get to the heart of what a problem is with an employee, but you never know where that's going to take you. And sometimes it can take you to some places where maybe the employee doesn't even want to open up and tell you. You can't find out the answer. Or maybe they get defensive, or maybe it's something you didn't even want to know, right? So it's a useful tool, but as a manager, that doesn't mean you pry into people's lives further than what they're comfortable with. All right, questions or comments? All right, well, let's do the grow activity then. So we'll see as we go through the next couple theories that some of them were in the grow activity. For example, reinforcement theory. This theory says what reinforces one person doesn't necessarily reinforce somebody else. Louis? You're Louis? Did you put your name on the list? You did? Okay. All right, let me just double check and make sure I updated that. Because I might have done that. Just take a second. So I'll talk while I'm doing this. So in reinforcement theory, what motivates one person? Okay, just check you in. Does not necessarily motivate somebody else. So what reinforces behavior for you might not reinforce behavior for somebody else. I'll give you an example of that. If you've got an employee who's done a really good job, and so in front of everybody, you ask that employee to stand up, you tell everybody what a great job that employee did, you have everybody applaud for that employee, that might make the employee feel really good. For some people, that's really motivating. For other people, it's terrifying. They don't want to be singled out. For cultural reasons, or just maybe they're just shy, whatever it is, that would be maybe demotivating for some people. So that's what reinforcement theory tells us. If you want to motivate somebody, you need to know what motivates them. Or music, it might be music for some people. What's another example? Can you think of something that might motivate one person and not motivate somebody else?
Oh, they do the same job, same work, but one gets paid more.
Okay. That actually gets into equity theory that we're going to get to next. But tell me, so the fact that one person's getting paid more is you're saying motivating for them and not for the other person? Okay. I mean, if you're getting paid more than your coworkers, I could see that that might make some people work hard because they feel like they're special, right? That they must be such a great worker, so that could be motivating because it gets back into that internal feeling. On the other hand, some people might feel like, I don't think that's right. I think my coworkers deserve more. Like, remember that CEO that lowered his pay because he didn't feel it was right, he was making so much money? So yeah, I could see that could work. What are we gonna say, Jay?
What if they like take hours of leave, like give them some?
Ooh, that's a good one, yeah. Hours. Sometimes people want to work more hours, right? And they're happy if you give them more hours, and maybe that'll motivate them to do a good job. Whereas other people don't want the extra hours. And if you make them work more than they want to, that could be demotivating for them. Great example. So that's what reinforcement theory is all about. Then we get to equity theory. And equity theory says that when we compare how we are being treated to other people, if we feel that we are not getting good treatment, that can be demotivating. So that gets to your point, Ismail, a little bit more clearly, where if the person sitting next to you is doing the exact same job, they've been there the same amount of time, but they're getting paid more, the quality of their work is not any better than yours, you're gonna be thinking, that's not fair. That's not equitable. And therefore, that might demotivate you. So that's a pretty simple one to understand. But again, it is a useful theory because it does seem to apply. So that means you want to motivate people based on what actually motivates them, but you also want to treat people consistently, right? So there might be some employees that it motivates them if you spend more time giving them feedback. And there might be other employees where they don't like that. They like to work more independently. So under reinforcement theory, you need to then adapt. Provide the right level of feedback to each employee based on what's going to be motivating for them. But under equity theory, you also want to treat people fairly. So somebody might perceive that as, hey, why am I not getting more feedback? And they are. It's a little difficult to know what's going on inside of people's heads, right? because they don't always tell you. You have to observe their behaviors, pay attention to things like facial expression, tone of voice, try to figure out what's going on and whether or not people are motivated. And that brings us to another contemporary theory, goal-setting theory. By the way, there's an extra credit activity that involves goal setting that you can do anytime this semester and get 1 extra credit point. And in that activity, what you do is you establish 1-year goals, 3-year goals, and 5-year goals, both for your studies and for your career. So you can do that anytime this semester, and then I'll give you an extra credit point. So goal setting theory says that it's important for employees to have goals. Because as we know, the organization has a strategy, right, to reach its vision or its mission. And that strategy is supported by goals for the organization. But the employees need goals as well that will help them support the organizational goals. And according to goal setting theory, the employees' goals, they should have some input into. It shouldn't just be the manager telling the worker what their goals are, but the employee should be able to say, this is what I think I can achieve in a conversation with the manager. But the goal should be challenging enough that it will be motivational. Like if you set a goal, you know, maybe you're lifting weights. And I don't know, what's like just a normal amount that somebody can bench press? I don't even know. 240. Really? 240? Okay. Okay, so let's say that's your goal, but you can already do it. Well, then it's not really a goal, right? You need to raise it to something that's going to be a little bit challenging. Now, you wouldn't want to double it, right? Why would you not want to go from 240 to say 500? Too much. You're going to hurt yourself, right? And you're not going to be motivated to go to the gym if you know that you're going to go there and you're going to hurt yourself. So it needs to be challenging enough that you're going to be making improvement, but not so challenging that you're going to get hurt or you're going to stop doing it. As it shows in this image here, your goal should create a little bit of stress. We think of stress as a bad thing, but actually, if you had no stress at all, you'd be like one of those sloths in the rainforest that just kind of like sits there all day and doesn't do anything. We need some stress. It actually is good for our bodies to have some stress. It's good for our minds. But the question is, how much stress? If you always feel like you're being chased by a tiger, that's not good. Your body is going to be having too much adrenaline, other, stress hormones, and it's going to be really bad for you. On the other hand, never have any stress. What are you going to achieve? Right? You're just sitting on the couch all day, I don't know, watching TV. Probably is not going to be very good for your body or your mind. So what you need and what employees need is enough stress to make you try harder so that you're getting better at whatever you're trying to do, but not too much stress. And that's what you want to try to do with your employees. Think about coaches that coach athletes. They're always pushing them to do just a little bit better. Do it half a second faster. Do it, throw that ball just a little bit farther. And that's what makes them great athletes, because they keep improving. So that's goal setting theory. Questions or comments? All right. I guess I should point out here, this dude, he's got the highest performance, right? Because he's got the optimal amount of stress. This guy is too stressed. Guy has no stress, right? So you can see the top performer is the one with the right amount of stress. Now, as you set goals, I don't think this is in the textbook, but this is very common out in the business world. You want your goals to be SMART goals. If you do that extra credit activity, I want you to be thinking about your goals and if they're SMART goals. You do not have to, since I'm asking you in that activity for 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year goals for both your career and your studies, that's 6 goals I'm asking you to set. You don't have to identify how each one is a SMART goal. Sometimes students have done that, and it's a lot of work to identify for all 6 goals everything that makes this one a SMART goal, everything that makes that one a SMART goal. So you do not have to do that. But I want you to think about, as you're setting these goals, are they SMART goals? And what that means is the goal specific, not vague, right? If I just say, I want to go to the gym and lift weights, not very specific, right? How much weight? What type of weights? How long am I going to do it? That would make it more specific. Is the goal measurable? Well, if it is specific, it's probably going to be something we can measure. But let's say, be a good example of that. You know, again, if I said I wanted to lose, well, I don't think I need to lose weight. I probably need to gain some weight. But if somebody said I want to lose some weight, that's not measurable because it's not specific, right? If they said I want to lose 1 pound in a certain period of time, okay, that's something you could actually measure, and then you would know if you achieved it or not, right? And then attainable. Like I mentioned earlier, if the goal is too high and you don't feel like you can do it, then it's not a SMART goal. It has to be something you believe you can accomplish. It has to be relevant. Something that is important to you. If it's a goal that you're setting because somebody else wants you to, and you don't really care about it, it's not really relevant to your life. But if it's a goal that's going to help you achieve the things you want to achieve, then it's relevant. And there has to be a specific deadline to be a SMART goal. Because otherwise, you might never get it done. So these are the elements that make a goal SMART. And when you set your own goals, keep that in mind. If you are working with an employee to help them set goals for themselves, also try to make sure they're SMART goals. Okay, questions, comments? Time check here. We're doing really well on time, actually. Okay. Couple more slides and then we'll get to our matching activity. Here are a couple terms from the textbook that explain things that managers can do to help motivate employees. One is called job enlargement. Another one is called job enrichment. So can anybody tell me from the chapter readings, what's the difference between the two? What is job enlargement? What is job enrichment? It sounds similar. Job enlargement means giving people more tasks to do. Like we learned about the division of labor, right? Where by dividing up the work, it's more efficient. But if somebody's just doing the same thing over and over all day, it can get a little bored. So if you give them some additional tasks to do, they might find that more fulfilling and they feel more motivated. So that's all job enlargement is, making their job a little bit larger by giving them some additional tasks. With job enrichment, not only are they getting more tasks, but they're more challenging. So finding a way to, just like with goal setting, to set a higher standard that the employee has to meet. Okay? Job enlargement has to do with the tasks. Job enrichment has to do with the challenge. So these are tools as a manager you can use to help try to keep people motivated, especially if you notice somebody's getting bored in their work. My son is struggling with that. He's been doing the same job for a couple of years. I mean, his job has been enlarged and it's been enriched, but lately he finished a big project he was working on, and now he's bored at work. He's been thinking about quitting or finding another job. But I keep reminding him, you just hang in there. Eventually they're going to promote you or they're going to give you, some new tasks to do. So he's still there. Daisy.
What does he do for work?
So he works for this company that makes autonomous cars. And his main job is to make sure that when they're building the cars, they have all the parts that they need. So he has to work with the suppliers to make sure that all the different parts, the inventory, gets delivered on time. Which is, not the most exciting thing in the world. He has to sometimes contact suppliers, who are on the other side of the world. So you have to adjust for the time zone and deal with people with different languages. And he gets to meet with the engineering teams, find out what parts they need. He has to work with all the data, analyze the data, figure out when the parts need to be shipped so that they arrive on time. Not the most exciting thing in the world, but for a while, he was in charge of this big software implementation they were doing at his company, and he was representing his entire team, and he was training people, and he enjoyed that. But now that's done. So he's back to being bored.
Do you recommend that job?
Would I recommend it? I would recommend it. It's the type of thing that there's going to continue to be need for, because some of that can be automated with computers, but not completely. And it takes somebody that can really look, like, imagine a car, there might be 1,000 parts that go into that car. So somebody has to be making sure that, okay, we need this part from this supplier and it has to arrive by Thursday, otherwise it's going to delay production. It's a really important job. And it pays well, especially if you're working, it's tech, because building cars is technology. And these are high-tech cars because they're autonomous, and the company's owned by Amazon, which has a ton of money. So I think my son makes too much money, personally. I even told his boss once, I got a chance to talk to his boss, and I said, I think you all pay my son too much. And she said, no, he earns it. But for 26 years old, he's making more money than I made until I was like in my late 40s, probably. So yeah, I'd recommend it. Good work. Now, how he got into inventory planning, he never imagined that would be his job. He studied cognitive science, which is more psychology and computers. But his ability to manage data is what ended up getting him this job, even though he had no experience with inventory. And who knows where it's going to take him. If he stays in that same company, this company's been around for years. They don't even have a product available yet. they're still in development, but they have, I think, more than 1,000 employees. Amazon is just like throwing money at this company to grow it. And what Amazon's planning to do is replace all these Amazon delivery vehicles that are out there with drivers, replace them with these autonomous vehicles. So you might someday see these vehicles dropping off your packages, no driver. And also, these vehicles are designed to be taxis as well. So you could just go on an app, order it, it shows up, no driver, you get in, and then it just takes you to wherever you're going. So the smile, and then I'll go right.
What's the company's name?
Zoox, Zoox, Z-O-O-X. They're pretty cool looking cars. I'll show you what their car looks like. I know we're a little bit off the topic, but hey, we have a little fun. So, not Zoom, Zoox. And this is what their vehicles look like. Bigger. Yeah, kind of cool. There's no steering wheel. There's no brake pedal or accelerator because it's completely autonomous. And it goes either way. It can go forwards or backwards. Doesn't make a difference because, again, it's autonomous. Yeah. So I keep telling my son, hey, you're in a great company. They're treating you great. Hang in there. If you find something better, fine, but it's gonna be hard for him to find a better gig than what he's doing right now. All right, so other things that managers can do to help keep employees motivated is come up with schedules that work well for those particular employees. You might have heard recently, Bernie Sanders, you probably know, is one of our senators, senator from Vermont, proposed that in the United States, we go to a 4-day work week. That people who have a 40-hour job instead work 32 hours a week, so 4 days instead of 5, and get the same pay. And it's not a new idea. This has been done by a lot of different companies around the world, and the research has shown actually productivity goes up. You would think it would go down because if you're working fewer hours, you wouldn't get as much done, but it actually goes up because people are more motivated, they're more energetic, and they get more done in those 32 hours than they used to get done in 40 hours. So I don't know if it's going to happen, probably not anytime soon, but there might be some companies that do it. I can tell you, most of the faculty that teach here only teach 4 days a week. Now, in all honesty, I can't speak for everybody. I can tell you, I'm teaching every day, right? Because I'm grading papers, I'm answering emails, but I only come to campus 4 days a week. And then if we have meetings, we usually will just do that on Friday, and a lot of those are over Zoom. So we're kind of doing that here as faculty members. So that would be a 4-day work week. Some companies offer flex time, which means as long as you get your work done, do it whenever you like. So if you need to come in late one day, leave early one day, no problem, as long as you get your work done. So that could be something that employees really value. Obviously, remote work is really popular these days. That used to be called telecommuting, but now we call it remote work. And then there's job sharing. Now, job sharing would be, let's say you just became a parent. Whether you're the mother or the father, and you want to spend time at home with your kid. So you want to go from working full-time to working part-time. Well, maybe your employer says, even though you have a full-time job, we'll let you go to part-time, and then we'll hire somebody else part-time to do the other part of your job. So now that one job is now being shared by two people, which allows you to stay with the company, right? And also be able to spend time with your child. So these are some creative things that, the managers might be able to do to keep their employees motivated. Any questions, any comments? Right. So training and educating employees is something that's motivating. As you help them grow in their skills and knowledge, they become more confident, right? Sometimes they then leave your organization. So you also want to try to provide them advancement opportunities so they can apply that knowledge. That was a frustrating thing for me back when I worked at AT&T, and they paid for my master's degree. But I kept applying for higher jobs. I wanted to go from supervisor to manager, and I kept getting turned down. They eventually said, okay, look, you all paid for my MBA, and you're not allowing me to be a manager. So I left. I went someplace else and got a job as a director. So I just skipped being a manager and went the next step, although I went to a much smaller company. But if you're educating your employees, ideally you also give them advancement opportunities. There are programs where you get stock, or sometimes they give you the option to buy the stock at a discount. But either way, that could be worth a lot of money. Another thing my son benefits from by being at this company, he gets stock in Zoox, his employer, which right now is not worth anything because nobody even knows about this company really. But if the company in the future becomes publicly traded where that stock can be sold on the stock exchange, that can be worth a lot of money. And he gets some Amazon stock because that's the parent company. So it's another reason I tell them, stay where you are, even though you're bored, it'll pay off. Some organizations offer sabbaticals. That's more common at universities, but other companies will sometimes do it where, let's say you want to go spend a year getting a master's degree, or you want to spend a year traveling just to have a different experience. And your employer might say, no problem, go ahead and do that. Obviously you're not going to get paid for that year in most cases. But then come back and we'll let you come back into the same job. That would be called a sabbatical. If it's for a shorter time, like let's say you've got a family member that needs medical care, that's a leave of absence. That's normal, and that's to some degree a right that you have under federal law. But if it's for a longer period of time and it's just because it's something you want to do, that would be called a sabbatical. If it's something that directly benefits your employer, they might even keep paying you. So if you want to go maybe research the industry and the competitors and then come back and bring that knowledge back to the company, they might even say, okay, go ahead and do that. We'll keep you on the payroll, and then you can come back to your job. There's a point here about knowledge workers. Today, most of us do not work in a factory. Most of us don't do manual labor. In general, Americans provide services and provide knowledge because we're in the information age, right? We've got machines to do a lot of the other stuff. So that changes the character of our employees. Today, businesses, the workers at businesses want to be treated as professionals. They want a theory Y type of manager that's going to value them and listen to them, not a theory X manager that's going to boss them around. Now here's an interesting question, and this question came even before the pandemic. Why are absenteeism and turnover rates increasing? A lot of people are just fed up at how little they're getting paid and what they're expected to do for that little pay, right? That's sort of just the situation we're in. That really has to do with our whole economic system in the United States. We have seen in the last year pay start to go up. We've seen union activity increase and create better pay and benefits for a lot of workers. But it's hard to be motivated when you go into your job and you're making just enough to get by for the month, or maybe not even enough to get by. And you see the CEO flying all over the world making millions of dollars. And you say, what makes them so special, right? So that can cause people to just not show up or quit. All right, so we have 7 minutes left. We have 8 learning objectives. It's a little crowded here, but this is one image. This circle is one. I think the rest of them are pretty self-explanatory. Go ahead and take a moment and try to connect the pictures, and we'll see what matches you came up with.
I see somebody also. I just had my first case. He went like, I'll just show you the video and stuff. There's like, he's a lawyer.
Sorry about that.
And he had his first, 10 seconds.
Okay, which of these images do you think best matches Taylor's scientific management? Remember, he was the first one we talked about that didn't consider motivation, just looked at how things are done. The pyramid? No. I mean, there's no wrong answer, but there is a better answer. Angels.
Top right.
Top right, yeah, that is a better answer. It's a little hard to see right now, but what's going on in that picture? What's that? I don't know exactly what's being done. There we go. They're doing some kind of work, but you see those lines? The lines are to measure how much the worker is moving. There's a clock to measure how quickly things are getting done, and the whole thing is being filmed. And that's what Taylor used to do, time motion studies, to understand how workers were working and figure out how to make them work more efficiently. That is a good match there, a clear match with scientific management. How about the Hawthorne studies? Remember, that's where they were doing the research at the factory. They realized that they had to pay attention to human motivation. Middle left. This one here?
Yeah.
Yep, that is actually a picture from the Hawthorne plant. So we picked up on that. That is correct. That is where they did that research. How about Maslow's hierarchy? Yes, what did I hear over here? Yeah, so Maslow's hierarchy, there is the pyramid that we saw earlier, okay? How about theories X, Y, and Z? Bottom right, okay, that one's kind of obvious there, right? How about Herzberg's motivator hygiene theory?
Bottom left.
Bottom left, okay. Right there, we can see the motivators and the hygiene factors. How about more contemporary theories? What was that, Michael? I just didn't hear you.
Top left.
Top left, yeah. Yeah, if you look up there, I'll zoom in again. You do see some contemporary theories there. Expectancy theory, goal setting theory. And then over here, we've got the more traditional, like, the theories X and Y and so forth on the right. But on the left, yeah, those are some contemporary theories. How about redesigning jobs to increase employee motivation? All right. Middle right, okay. Now I should zoom in on that one too. That talks about why employees leave organizations. Why do they leave? Maybe they feel like their employer is not fair, or there's a negative atmosphere, right? And so they leave. Maybe they're not getting enough feedback. They're not allowed to make their own decisions in the workplace. or they feel like they're not getting paid enough, or getting the benefits that they need. Or there's too much stress, or there are too many better opportunities out there, right? So those are some of the reasons employees tend to leave. And yeah, so then management can try to address those needs and keep employees. So there's only one image left, which is this one here. And these are some of the things that management can do as well. Try to add more tasks, make the job more interesting, help develop the skills of the employee. Task significance we didn't talk about, but help the employee understand what their work contributes, how it benefits the customer, because that can be motivating. Help allowing the workers to make more decisions and then giving them feedback. Believe it or not, employees like feedback. Even when it's constructive feedback about what they can do better, as long as you present it in a positive way, that's motivating. Right? Any questions or comments? All right, have a good spring break. I'll see you April 1st, Monday, April 1st.
Oh, yeah, we have fun actually.